Welcome to the Idea Land podcast, hosted by Ravi Kamati Reddy. Dr. Michelle Zhou is CEO of Juji Inc., a Silicon Valley company specializing in building cognitive, conversational, and empathetic AI. An entrepreneur and scientist, Michelle explains why the future depends on AI with a high EQ, machines that understand what we want and how we feel.
Michelle Zhou, CEO of Juji. Last time we spoke, I feel like you were at the beginning of this journey with Juji, but you've been working in this area with some of the best teams in the world for a long time. So could you just tell everyone who's watching or listening your story? What is Juji, and how did you get there? What were the steps before Juji?
Right. Thank you, Robbie, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and talking to you about Juji and Juji's journey. So to start, I have always been in the area, interdisciplinary field called human-centered AI, which intersects artificial intelligence and human-computer interaction. So the idea for this interdisciplinary field is to actually make smarter computers that can better understand people and use such understanding to better help people. So for example, if the computer can know the person's needs and wants and the personality traits, so they can actually recommend maybe the best career path and the financial decision, financial plans, and as well as probably healthcare, wellness routines, right, regimes. And so before I started Juji, I worked at IBM Research, IBM Watson Group for more than 15 years. So there we have actually developed a conversational AI system, and also one of the products called the IBM Watson Personality Insights. It's all in the effort of trying to actually use creating smarter computers to better understand people, better help people. So one of the challenge here it is, so you need like maybe, if not hundreds, at least a number of PhDs, a number of very talented engineering teams, and not mentioning huge amounts of data, intensive computational resources to create those smart computer systems. So one of the Juji's goals it is, we really want to democratize the creation, the operation of the AI systems. So anyone, especially including non-IT professionals, so they may have domain knowledge, they're subject matter experts. So we want to put those tools in their hand so they can create their own AI assistants, customizing any way they want and deploy it and manage it and maintain it in any way they want. Right, so that's what idea of the core part of the Juji. So right now, Juji is creating what we call it a cognitive AI assistants. So again, from AI point of view, so many AI companies also focusing on teaching machines, AI assistants, various types of skills, especially human perceptual skills, understanding images, understanding natural language. But we also have another kind of a goal in mind. It is we want to teach those AI assistants what we call advanced human skills. It's almost because in our kind of we envision that those AI assistants will help companies, organizations to augment their workforce, not replace them, really augment their workforce. In that regard, whenever you want to hire an assistant, you also want the assistant to have some emotional intelligence, right? Soft skills. How do you collaborate with people? How do you actively listen to your audience? How do you read between the lines to understand your audience? So basically, coming back, there are two things we're focusing on the Juji. To teach the AI assistants human soft skills, like active listening, reading between the lines. Second, democratize the creation of such cognitive AI assistants. So anybody, literally, any organization, doesn't matter they have AI or no AI expertise, can create their own custom AI assistants to augment their workforce, to relieve the burdens on their human workforce, right? But in the meantime, to scale out their operations to help more people they want to help. So that's kind of at a high level gist of what Juji is doing.
Michelle, that just seems like so science fiction. I mean, and I mean that in a good way. I mean, like, you're making science fiction a reality, it looks like. But the fundamental question, the glaring question is, it's hard to teach people these soft skills, right? So how can we even start, I mean, building a process to teach machines how to do this? Or is it actually easier to teach machines? Are humans just so prickly and complicated that,
So
it's actually much more fun to teach machines to do this?
I love your question. You're absolutely right. That's why when we told other people, we said this one. Sometimes humans even cannot master certain soft skills, right? But you have to keep in mind why sometimes people couldn't master certain soft skills is because of their personality, because of their maybe emotional signatures. So on another side of machines, you almost like teach somebody who has a clean slate, right? Because the machines
Yeah.
don't have biases from beginning. Machines don't have emotional burdens, how they want to interact with people. So in some way, you're right. It's easier to teach machines those soft skills and more, and depending on which type of soft skills. So for example, if you want a machine to be having human skills of abstract reasoning, to have the creativity, it's much harder, right? Because it's just, we're not there yet. But a certain soft skills, like what I mentioned earlier, reading between the lines, right? So certain people are very good at reading between the lines. For example, detectives, psychologists. You know why? Because they got trained. They pay attention to the details that normal people often miss, right? The facial gesture, how the inconsistent may be consistent in their communication patterns and how they communicate and what they communicate, right? So this case, actually, if you're talking about this very small, very easy to miss evidences, it's much easier to teach machines because the machine do not forget any small things, right? So in our case, we use the modern psychometric theory called the item response theory in conjunction with big data analytics, basically to train machines to identify the very small signals often can be used to reveal humans' characteristics. And for example, like this is kind of in the line of the work called psycholinguistics, which means it's actually a very old subject area field of study, which means that how people communicate and how they actually use words, the patterns reveal the people's actually psychological characteristics. And if you can identify those kind of evidences, you can train machines to also infer people's unique characteristics. So that's how we have taught machines to infer, we call the personal insights, right? Because it's much easier for machines to do because machines will pay attention to what they are taught to, and instead of kind of missing anything, right? So, but the humans probably much harder. Like for example, we just actually talk about a bunch of things, right? And probably even myself couldn't remember every word I remember a word I just said. But the machines, like a recording, doesn't miss anything, right? Wouldn't miss anything.
So would it be fair to say, well, first of all, I think I'm going to date myself and probably age myself with this reference, but I feel like you've just revealed the great secret of every TV detective on every show that's ever been, right? So like the Angela Lansbury's, the Columbos,
Right.
is this what would we call this process, something that those people or people like that, or people who have high EQ, they're intuiting feelings, emotions, personality types, and responding correctly with how people are choosing their words during that communication? And would that be fair to say that's something that you're trying to make computable in essence?
Oh, yes, in at least partly in that way, right? So actually, I got a question in one of my speeches, talks, and people say that, machines don't even have emotion. But how could you think a machine could have emotional intelligence? And machines can be empathetic. Actually, I said it. I told the person, I said, you actually asked the great question, right? So the coming to us, it is, can you teach something that doesn't have emotion to be emotionally intelligent? I think the answer is yes. You know why? Actually, it's easier. Emotional intelligence means two parts of it, right? One part of it is you want this one to understand other people's feeling, right? Understand to be in other people's shoes. And the second part of it is you be understanding them and also showing that you're understanding. So, sometimes the people, we're trying to say certain people don't show that kind of emotional intelligence. I would say it's my hypothesis too. I think that probably scientific studies will back it up in some way, which means it is maybe people do understand what other people feel, but they don't. They choose not to. Very possible, right? They choose not to. For example, I knew that this person actually feels sad. I knew that if I say something will make this person feel sad and feel happy, you choose sometimes do the opposite, right? Because sometimes you probably do this too. You probably heard about this too, and see people do it too. You think the person doesn't know if they say this one will make us upset? Of course they know, but maybe that's their intention, to make you upset, to make you angry. But the machines themselves don't come with emotions, don't come with purpose by default. But if you teach them to say, hey, don't do this, you make people feel heard, feel one, the machines won't do that, right? So in this case, it is, yes, the machines don't have emotion themselves, but you could teach them to be emotionally intelligent, which means it is to say the right thing, to actually to show that as if they feel what people feel, even they don't feel it, but they can remember how how people show off their intelligence. They have to communicate in some way. So basically, machines just communicate in a way, make you feel that way. Not necessarily they need to feel that way, right? So that's kind of things I was trying to think about. Hey, that's true. When people feel something you actually don't know, only when you know it is they express that feeling. So hey, that's actually cool for machines to do. Then machine just need to express that feeling, but that without being feeling it, and
It
without
is
the
interesting.
emotional burden.
There is some big percentage of human communication, just linguistic communication, that probably is just noise. Or I've heard someone say a statistic around. I'm forgetting this person's name. It was a researcher, it was a linguist, who was saying like 30% of human communication is just clearing up misunderstandings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about all the people in the conversations you have all of your life, and if you're spending a third of your time just being like, "I didn't mean that. What I meant was this." And I think you're seeing it live in presidential debates, fights on Twitter and Clubhouse. It's people either doing it unintentionally, or like you say, it could be intentional because you're trying to elicit emotion. Well, and it does bring this. There seems to be an AI rabbit hole that's easy to go down, which is, hey, like you were mentioning with that question you had, which is, if this machine is it alive, is it conscious, or whatever? And you're saying it doesn't matter, because as long as it is able to respond to somebody, to evoke or persuade through an emotional response or arousal, that's good enough. What is it about humans, though? Because I would actually think the other way. I would think I actually am so comfortable with this idea because I think humans and machines have been talking for a long time. It's just now they're talking back to us. I mean, how many times have I talked to my car? Many times. We personify these objects. And we personify characters on TV when we know they're fictional, or cartoons. Or why is it? What is with the human propensity to forget that we're talking to Siri and see Siri as an embodied person with an EQ? And is this work for everybody, or are there certain groups in the population who kind of see through this trick and just don't really interact with these things? Can we find that out now?
I think because you actually asked the multiple parts of it, and that one first part it is, I think this is a lot of studies show that actually one of them from a scientist, Professor Cliff Nass. He has a book about how people behave when they interact with machines. It's very similar how they behave, how they interact with the real humans. There's not much of a difference. This is precisely because we humans have emotions. We're just who we are while we're humans. So when humans get into that one, humans will develop a emotional attachment to it. Like, for example, as people have pets, right? And people, even I don't have animal pets, but I have a lot of plants. For example, I do develop emotional attachment to my plants. If a plant die, I feel very sad too, right? So that's what makes us human. Nobody gonna change us on that one, which is great, right? So this is one part of it. Is so to your question, it is so doesn't matter whoever is going to work with machines and then you and basically interact with machines. You eventually they will equate to as if they're working with human, right? In a point, that's why scientific studies actually show that kind of behavior. Second part of it is that it is, I guess people ask me a lot. It is, especially our clients. So when there's a machine interact with the users, do you want to let the users know this is a machine versus this is a human, right? Because in some organizations they say, oh yeah, I don't want my users to know this is a machine. I want this machine to pretend to be human. We always scale and say, no, do not pretend, because machines have so many imperfections, and you couldn't really replace humans. So even though I'm a scientist, I have been working in this human-centered AI area for last probably almost 25 years. I don't believe machines will ever replace humans. That's precisely because machines don't have those emotions, don't have this one. And also I think there's a right balance, what we call it, a human-machine teaming relationship, right? So in my view, I always think about, maybe I'm optimistic, I always think about humans will always be the supervisors of the machines. I changed the stance from operators to supervisors precisely because of the no code supervisor, which means it is you will tell the machines on the high level what the tasks will be, what the high level instructions will be. The machines will go ahead and carry out the tasks, right? Figure out the nitty-gritty details versus the person has to be the operator. You can think about used to be the robotic operator. You have to do all the kind of like movements, all the things, right? So I think we will pass that era, really becomes the supervisor. Like right now, most of our clients are really supervisors of their AI assistants, just on the high level, maybe teach once so the machines can learn on their own and then learning new knowledge and learning new patterns. So I think that's one. So only thing is there's a controversial. Some people, because I think it's like in a panel, maybe in some other type of interview, will ask me, say, oh, Michelle, some people actually, I guess it's in panel, some people want machines to be their companions, like their girlfriend, their boyfriend. So how would you take that? And I said, it really depends how do you want to view the machines, right? I don't think the machine can ever replace the real girlfriend, a human girlfriend, and the real boyfriend. If you want to treat them just like another, like a game, for example, like you can say, oh, my phone is my best friend, my computer is my best friend. But when you say this one, it's not in the sense of your real human best friend. Would you agree with me on that?
I agree with you for sure that there's things that are offered by human that are exponentially better than what can be on the even the smartest set of computationally linguistically savvy AIs. What I will say, though, is that there's a subset of people who, for whatever reason, have a psychology where they probably can it's easier to hijack them to where they're feeling a lot of solace and comfort with virtual agents. And I think we all have that to some extent. I mean, honestly, do you remember back in the day, Microsoft's Clippy? I felt bad when I closed. I felt bad when I closed Clippy. I was like, oh, sorry, guy, bye. Because it was, yeah, that's right. Well, he has the eyes, and it's very, very clearly designed to evoke an emotional response. But there are cases in Japan where people are so sucked in. They're really suffering from a problem. A subset of people there. of just agoraphobia. People are not making contact. Their birth rate's going down, and they're playing video games. And there's a bunch of people who are marrying apps. Like they're with their avatars and their Nintendo Switches to a pathologic state. Now, either all of us at some point of stress or PTSD or trauma probably could be susceptible to that thing. So I think there's a fine line of like, when does the mental health bot become something that augments your thinking versus where is it replacing completely a human psychologist? And that's a very gray area to me. I think we have to be careful there for clinically.
Yeah, I don't think it would, at least as I said, I'm an optimistic scientist. I just don't think, I guess my argument, not argument, maybe my understanding of that one, you're right. So, you know why people, because many research studies, including ours, show that people are much more authentic, are much more to be themselves when they're with machines, right? You know why? So this is one of the psychological, called psychological safety. Because machines, at least at this stage, right? Machines do not judge you. And the machines more, not that super smart yet. So act as more like what you call a kid, a child. So we are always more honest with child, right? So you don't want to lie to child, something like that, because you felt like a child doesn't judge you. A child is very innocent. Maybe that word is good, innocent. That's why people do that one. So once the machines get more evolved and with more intelligence, I'm just wondering, right? I don't know because we haven't got to the stage yet. Whether we want to educate the human counterparts to say that one, just keep in mind, this is still a machine, right? Because what my argument about why machines would never replace humans is, it's the experience part. Not even mentioning, so I'm pretty sure you have a childhood friends, right? And now I have my childhood friends, I have my husband, which I also consider all my best friends. But certain things I prefer to talk to my childhood friends. You know why? Because we experienced the same. We grew up together, we knew. But if I talk about something else in my adulthood life, I prefer to talk to my husband because we experienced the same. So it's very difficult to have the machines to replace that, because unless the machine has experienced this, has exactly the same experience as you had, right? I'm pretty sure you often had this one. And I just remember when I spoke to my sister, I said yesterday was happened to be Chinese New Year. So I would talk to my sister and my mom, said, oh, you know that 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, in the Chinese New Year, we would do X, Y, Z. Only the humans can do. Only the humans who experience the same can do that, right? But even you put that into the machine, I don't know how machine would actually give a theory, because you wouldn't, even though machine would recall that one, you don't have that kind of connection to it, because the machine did not experience that with you together. That's the whole point, right?
There is this, and there that's right, and that there's this growth phase where you both matured and went through these experiences and you can relate to. However, it does bring up an interesting question, because I feel like we're at a time in this timeline of innovation. We're at a specific node where all three of these things you could play with all three dials of the privacy, of the pretending, and the shared experience. That's with children. So I wonder now, I mean, I'm older now, but I've put some more gray hairs on since we last talked, but someone who's 6 years old or 7, this generation that's growing up, that's never known a world where they couldn't talk to a 1-foot cylinder in their kitchen and get instant answers. That blows my mind. What do they think of these? Are they comfortable? Are they comfortable sharing their experiences? Will they be? And do they care? Is it going to pass the Santa Claus test? I mean, are you going to destroy their world if you tell them there's no person behind there, or do they know and they not care? So I'm fascinated by the application of this kind of AI to young kids.
I think that's a great question, because you just reminded me your description just reminded me what I said, right? You're right. So if the kids will grow up with the machines, that might be a different story, because the machine's almost like their childhood friend and knows everything about them, right? So actually, that's a kind of things that needs to be studied out, needs to be have a more, I would say, understanding of that. Because I remember, because of our cognitive AI, it's so advanced now. So some of actually educators were asking the question, say this one, hey, what if we put a Juji like cognitive AI into toys, like the kids toys, and they interact with this AI, right? Teddy bears, or maybe on their Barbie dolls, and like, all the time. And then actually, when this discussion raised was because of ethical issues, right? So for example, if they actually this example, because if you remember what I said, it is our AI actually reading between the lines by dynamically analyzing, not automatic, but dynamically analyzing the conversation text, right? And they're trying to infer the user's needs and the wants and the characteristics. So thinking about the toy like this, suddenly found out that because they interact with the kids, right? Suddenly found out that the kids used to not say those swear words. The suddenly starts to say that and also become very angry, right? Should this toy reports back to mom and dad or the school teacher to say, hey, this is a kind of abnormal behavior. This kid used to be very kind, very gentle, and a mild temper, but suddenly, just for the recent 2 weeks, become very angry, become kind of just always speak these swear words. Because from the positive side, this could be sign this kid either got bullied or either got kind of some kind of traumatized, or from another way around, it is if the kids grow up, figure out that my best friend actually spying on me. What so where should we set the line, right? So this is actually very a lot of ethical issue, privacy issue. I don't think anybody has, at least I don't have the answer yet, a great answer, because technology advances, people see the possibility already, and I guess people don't have the answer yet. It's almost like people using a camera for surveillance, right? And some people, because saying that they violate privacy, but some people say that it helps us catch criminals, catch crimes. So which way you're gonna go, right? So it's always you have to have the delicate balance. Because I am just thinking about what your point. It's a great point. If they grow up with somebody, and what kind of roles a machine would the machine would actually play, right? So I think it still needs to be hashed out, needs to be kind of the policy, the usage policy, and needs to be at least
Guidelines.
developed. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about our upcoming podcast. So I was just looking around and I was thinking about some topics. I was doing some research, and I stumbled upon. I'm curious to see what you think about this. Sundar Pichai's demo of Google Duo. I believe it was 2018 or so. At the time, I remember it was on stage, and he was using it to make a phone call to a hairdresser, and it was successful. And there were, a million people in the audience just tweeting on TechCrunch live that this was the most incredible display of a conversation between a human and a machine, and it was convincing. And at the time, I remember thinking, well, this is really cool. This could be very helpful. I can imagine 15 tasks I could give this thing right now to give me some time back during the day. I rewatched it the other day, and I had a really icky feeling. It was this, I was like, ugh, because, and it just, I think, speaks to your point about being fooled, because you're watching live as someone's getting fooled, and it doesn't feel good. And I wonder, there's a little bit of a disgust that came there, and I'm like, that's not having that person be fooled looks cool from the third person perspective. If you were that person, though, I would want to know if I was talking to a human or bot. And there are times now when I say, like, I was joking when I asked you when we started, like, are you a bot? But I think it's very common for people to ask while they're on hold in a customer service bot or agent that's being used, hey, is this a person or is this real? Because they sound convincing. What do you think about that? Because I'm again reminded of one more thing, which was one of the biggest things that like leads to divorce, like an indicator for divorce, is contempt. Like if you're contemptuous of your partner, like in marriage counseling, if you're rolling your eyes when your wife is telling the counselor something, it's like that's a bad sign. And I feel like contempt makes bad products too. And once you start losing trust in your customer with a product that's trying to lie to you, you start inducing contempt for that product, which is kind of another bad sign. How do you feel about things like that when we are fooling people?
Interesting. I think from my personal perspective, I think it's about expectation and the purpose, right? So I guess mostly driven by the purpose. So let's say, for example, if the purpose is just to get the job done, let's say I need to make appointment with my doctor, I need to make appointment with my like your hairdresser or maybe appointment at restaurants. I probably care less about on another end it's a real person or it's a machine as long as the job gets done, right? That's why it's the purpose and the performance, the expectation as well. However, another way, it basically depends on where to be used application. So let's say I wanted to do something very different. I wanted to speak with my doctor. Really wants to get my doctor's opinion. So my expectation is high. I really want the human to be there. That's why I said as earlier I mentioned that when we our clients asked us, can they basically mask our AI cognitive AI assistant as the real person? We always say no. Do not lie. Do not actually pretend, right? Because they're going to have a mismatch of expectations. So in that case, then unless it tells me very clearly to say a doctor is not available at this point to speak with you, I'm his AI assistant. So may I just collect several piece of information? So this case will help the doctor to respond to you. I don't mind either. But if somebody tries to pretend to be a doctor to basically imitate a nice voice or something like that, then I will feel be cheated. It's about actually again expectation, purpose of the use of the one, right? I think that's just me. I think if I just get it done, I don't care it's a real person. But if I'm explicitly asked for something, but then I still got cheated, I think that would be an issue. That would be a problem.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. It's funny that you're really pioneering these conversations with actual customers. You have to solve these problems where there's no clear answers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the decisions you all are making are going to set a precedent for companies to come.
Mm-hmm.
As we navigate this. So through this whole process, what is really, like the more you study machines, the more you learn about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
What has really surprised you about human nature throughout this journey for the last 10 years? I mean, is there anything that's really like that you've been like that just a scientific result that you didn't expect?
I wouldn't say there's a surprising. Maybe it's more reinforcement, right? The reinforcement it is we humans are very smart and great at abstract reasoning, abstract learning, making conclusions and making decisions. And machines are really, really dumb, to be honest. Right? Even though I'm building it, and it needs to be taught, right? And another thing I think is a reinforcement. It is machines. It's kind of like just another tools, right? As I said, it's not going to replace us. It's going to augment us, depending on how you're going to use it, right? So it's not going to, let's say, when the organizations use it, especially the organizations are very forward-looking, very innovative, they really use it in a very nice way to make both of their customers, their clients happy, as well as make their workforce happy. Because this one, I could say again, is a reinforcement. It is humans, because they're so smart, many things they don't like to do, right? So we learned it is that's why it's cut out for machines to do. So which human beings would like to be staying on the phone answering the same question tens of thousands of times a day, even to different people? I don't think anybody who even social would like to do that, right? So and basically tirelessly do that. So humans don't like to do this kind of mundane stuff. That's kind of reinforcement over again. And another part of it is humans are, how do you say, I wouldn't say lazy is maybe a negative word. Another one it is maybe smart is a positive word. Humans want to have shortcuts, right? So people always ask us, hey, why do I need everybody now starting to thinking about on the website, I should have a AI chatbot, have AI to help them. I already have all the information on my website. Why do still I need to have an AI chatbot? That's a question asked them most often. Then we said it is from, then you ask other organization why they put on one. It's because even though you have all the information on your website, people do not look at every page to find the information they want, right? You could say laziness. You could also say smartness because I don't want to. If I can chat with somebody just to say, hey, so where is the application deadline? So where is application link? When is the application deadline? So I don't need to go search. I don't need to go navigate multiple websites, multiple links to find that one. Saves my time. It's great, right? So that's basically we see it is humans always want to take shortcuts. Maybe it's not a surprise, as I said, that we knew that, but just reinforce it in this era. If you have machines to help you, hey, please use that, right? Another part of it is humans are very creative and smart. They don't like to do repetitive work. They don't want to do the work which is meaningless. And they want to do always, hey, I would love to do something different. That's always kind of proved in the scenario in application. We see how AI can really help to relieve human burdens in those kind of tasks. And also in the tasks humans like to do, like a creativity, they don't want a machine to help because I want to do this one. I'm enjoying doing this one. Why do I need you to help, right? So it's kind of so this is again reinforcement. Another one, if you want to give a tool to somebody to use, this tool is better be helpful, not to add more work, right? Just to give you a little bit idea about this is actually I learned from my startup area. So when we created the AI, our assistants to help. We want to help the market researchers, want to help the user researchers to do better user research. Basically, they can use this AI to ask open-ended questions, and because it's time consuming, right? So if you have one user researcher, you cannot interview 10 people at the same time. If you have an AI assistant, you can interview one. But we didn't do a good job at the beginning because they couldn't go to edited question. They couldn't customize their AI, basically AI research assistant very well. And more, once the research results being collected, once the user input be connected, we don't have analytical capability to help them analyze that. So I went out to ask, just like any entrepreneur, ask our friends who are friends and family members who are in this area to try our initial product. So I really got hit hard. It is one of the person I knew very well. It's a great user researcher, and she was telling me. She said, "Michelle, thank you for asking me to try. I will be happy to try, but to be honest, I'm not going to use your tool." I said, "Why?" Because your tool didn't really help me get my job done. Actually asked me to do more work than I do. And I said, how is it? Because now I have to figure out, because this tool doesn't quite work yet, right? Figure out how it make it work. Second, once I got all these questions answered, I have to analyze them. You don't have analytics one. So then I said, oh, really, if you want somebody to use your tool, you got to give it 100%. It can be 80% there, right? So I got, if you ask me the surprise it is, people always tell you, oh, get the MVP out. And in your startup world, right? Just let them try it. No, that's not working because we tried that and the people said, I'm not going to use it. So in this case, you don't really know who are your users, right? So far, I haven't found really one client that said this one, oh, your tool is so crappy, I'm going to use it anyway. I haven't got, because everybody is super busy. Everybody really wants to try something, get something that can help them, not burden them, right? So that's why we really kind of, I would say, suck it in to say, hey, we have to make it work. By the way, there's a balance. The tool has to be useful to some way. It doesn't need to be perfect, right?
Because I think startup people get annoyed when they know you're putting something out where you can already anticipate the problems, and it sucks to be told there's a problem when you can anticipate it. But it's a lot of learning when you can't anticipate it. You know, you're getting direct feedback from your customers. They're like, "Hey, I'm going to use this at work." And as a physician, I can tell you, we're very, very sensitive to any added labor that we have to do. If I have to move a mouse 3 square feet more a day, that's like I'm going to complain about it. So that's the most physician thing. Which reminds me of this, just taking a 30,000-foot view of the different use cases that you feel like at Juji you've really been you guys have got your fingers in so many different domains. Can you talk about the health and the healthcare space, and how that is different from the other things? Do you have an added burden of pressure, of expectation, privacy? How has that experience been, and what kind of feedback have you gotten from the use of your bots? And agents?
I think it's another great question. I think the healthcare domain is very similar to the domain we're working with other, like for example, HR domain, right? Talent management, and another domain, it's educational domain about student learning. So Juji got the most of attraction in those domains is because now I just trying to reflect upon it is because all these domains are human-centered, thinking about it, right? Education domain is about teaching humans. Healthcare domain, it's about the wellness, the health of the humans. And also HR is about develop humans, identifying talent. It's all very human-centric. So those domains do have some shared characteristics, shared requirements. So one thing they want is something, the AI from in AI, what they call empathetic. Empathetic, which means it's not just having a conversation, but actually having a meaningful, productive, empathetic conversation, right? Which means it is the chatbot, the AI, at least shows that, can express that, hey, I'm here with you. I'm trying to help you. Versus on the majority of the other AI companies in our space, it is focusing on probably, for example, customer service, right? So customer service, when people go there already with an attitude, I think very few people go to customer service talking about it. I'm very happy. I just want to call customer service to tell them I'm happy. Always says I have an issue. I need to return. It's when I go to customer service. So in this case, it's under a lot of pressure already. So in our case, it's also from the proactive point of view, right? How can I help you? How can I care for you more? So it has a higher requirements, higher level of, I would say, quality required of the conversation is number one. Second, all those domains the people we worked with, our client we worked with, they have domain expertise. So they knew what the recruitment is like, what the challenges in talent retention, and what challenges in dealing with patients, challenges dealing with students, helping students to succeed in their learning process, right? So in this case, but all these organizations have another shared one. It is they may not have the first world-class IT team or hundreds, thousands of AI experts, right? So which means that is if they want to adopt very advanced, cutting-edge AI technologies, the no-code, reusable AI is a must because they just don't have that kind of resources to do that. And the third one it is we learned it is in any of these domains, things evolve. Think about it. Patient has a life cycle, right? Beginning, maybe not the patient yet. Then they become a patient. After the patient got treated, they become a post-treatment. Similarly with education, it's always a life cycle. Before they become a student of a program, during the program, after the program, they maybe want to do rescale, upscale in a relearning, right? Similarly in HR, before become a job candidate, become an employee gets promoted, and then maybe become retirement. So this whole life cycle of this one. So which means it is the AI assistants need to be also gradually also evolve, right? Doing different tasks. So this kind of a natural evolution needs to be there, needs to be easily adapted to the situation. So which means maintenance, means upgrade. Again, with limited resources in AI IT, it's also important to have a solution that they can manage. They can actually maintain, upgrade. Thinking about the example in a learning example, right? So when they have a new program, when they have a new let's say application criteria, so the recruitment specialists, they should be able to go inside there, change there quickly, not to spend another tens of thousands of dollars or maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars to say, hey, IT company, you have to come here to help me to update it, upgrade it, right? So similarly, you can think about the pandemic, how fast things could change, how policy could change even with the hospital, healthcare organization. You can't wait for somebody come in to say, I have to take down my chatbot, take down my AI assistant for 2 weeks to upgrade it. You don't have that luxury, right? So all these three parts of it needs to be addressed when they actually try to think about, select, adopt AI solutions, right? So it's really the quality of the service to please, to satisfy their audience, the people who they serve, and then to the easy of use and the speed to value, we call the time to value, and then to the last part of it is the ease, the to maintenance, to upgrade, to evolve. I think that all the things are very important to the organizations who really doing what we call the human-centered services. Deliver
Yeah, that makes a lot of
services.
sense. Well, I think the term you've mentioned a couple of times, which I want to delve into, I think give you a unique perspective on it, is no code. And what, just for the layperson who's not a programmer, no experience with coding, is not technical even, what is no code?
Okay, I have a good analogy to that, especially in these days, right? No code means it is like they use a very popular, very kind of well-known business tools like a PowerPoint, like a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet. They don't need to write code. They just, like, especially PowerPoint is a good example. So if you want to make a presentation, you go there, putting into a content. Hey, you have a PowerPoint deck, right? Presentation deck. You don't need to write any line of the code. Versus you have to figure out how can you line up every single bullets together, and which font are you going to use in terms of what's the spacing between one writing code to do that automatically, right? PowerPoint does that for you already, and so you don't need to. So you could just focus on your content, on your presentation format. Sometimes the format can even be given to you because you have those templates, right? So no code here it is from creating an AI assistant, AI chatbot point of view. It is you need to write the code to say, okay, my AI chatbot will say this one and how they can respond. Let's say I have to write this machine learning model. I have to download, I have to train it. Then I have to actually make sure how to write the Python code, write the JavaScript code to connect all the pieces together, right? And then I have to say, oh, what if there's an exception? How the chatbot needs to manage the conversational flow. I have to write a code to say, oh, if it's this one, and go to jump to here, and then if it doesn't work here, you have to worry about all these mechanisms, right? So in our case, no code means you don't need to worry about. You almost like you do a PowerPoint, you just give the content, and similarly, like you use the spreadsheet, you give the content of it. So our AI behind the scene will thread those together and to actually automatically generate an AI assistant for you.
So this can be as domain specific as someone would want if they just provided the content that was
with their domain, right? So I use this analogy because somebody was asking me about this too. So you said that if an organization or individual, a professional, would want the already made, right, completely made AI assistant, or they wish to customize themselves. So actually, it's like a PowerPoint, very similar to this analogy. Nobody probably would have the well-made set of PowerPoint. I'm going to use it. Few, rare, right? Because you want to adapt to your tone, your language, your brand. So I still believe at this point, people don't want to have the already made, completely made. They always want to change. They always want to go there. For example, even just change several wording, just change the punctuation mark. They want to make it my own, belong to my brand, belong to my voice. That's how we found it. The customers want to kind of like tinkering with it a little bit, just like they use PowerPoint, right? So I guess very few people will sell you a fully made PowerPoint. What are you going to use it for? And because you want to use it the template for say, but not the whole content, right? Similarly, I can see that same thing too. People will sell the templates, the conversational template with a structure, almost like say, oh, at the beginning you say greeting, and in the middle this is the flow, and at the end you wrap up. But how exactly the content would be, people would put in themselves because they want to represent their own brand, their own voice.
For non-technical people who are familiar with conversation, which is all of us,
Yeah.
To be able to deploy things that force multiply their labor, hopefully. But then really it comes down to when those conversations go off script, it seems like to me, when I look at the technology that most of us have already used, I mentioned Clippy, but that's a long time ago. But everyone today has Siri or some version of it on their phone, which is amazing. If you think about the fact that we have access to that and we just take it for granted. That being said, I have found, and I don't know if I'm a minority or if I'm the majority here, I don't use it. And I don't know why I don't use it. And I think my questions and tasks I would have for it are very complicated. I know that going in. So I already know and expect a high failure rate. So I'm like, oh, it's not worth my time. Whereas I'm probably in the minority. Probably a lot of people use it for menial things. But I guess my question is, where are we in the innovation timeline? It seems like Siri hasn't changed for 10 years. It feels like that. And every time I try to have a conversation with any of these bots that goes past a couple back and forths, they all seem to just kind of fall down. I mean, where is Juji on that innovation timeline, and where are we headed? Are we headed to real conversation? Is there anything now that I could just talk to for 5 minutes? That I hate to use the word Turing test, but you should
go to with our chatbot. I think you chat much more longer than 5 minutes. It's usually for 10-15 minutes, because our longest one was 3.5 hours, right? So it's what's the job interview chat, and then some candidate, which we ended up hire her as well, and really gave a very extensive responses to the chatbot's question, and they had this back and forth of the one, right? I think you are actually in majority in terms of you're not using theory, you're not using a one. It's because of the quality of the conversation. Again, as I said earlier, it's a very similar. Computer doesn't matter it's a AI or not AI. It's just a tool, right? If the tool doesn't help you, you're not going to use it, right? So if that tool truly helps you, I bet you will use it. So example, if a Siri can understand 80% of your one, if you ask Siri to say, hey Siri, today I'm so busy, can you just check, I'm using an example of myself, right? I'm looking for a particular plant on this dry shade corner. Can you make some recommendations? If the Siri knows me to say, knows about dry shade and knows me about the particular color, style, particular location, gave me some recommendations. Of course, I will use it. I will use it probably every day, not every hour, but every day, right? So the reason it is, I wouldn't ask Siri because I knew Siri would not be able to answer it, right? So that's about its and then to set expectation, it's about the tool. I think I learned from a previous IBM actually software executive. It's a very nice 3 simple rules when you create a tool like this one. First one has to be called prescriptive, which is telling you what it can do, right? Can be. Second one, I remember, is has to be open, which means that they can also keep learning, right? So if you, let's say Siri doesn't know something, you teach Siri actually knows it. Hey, got me interested in, I will continue using it because it continue. So that's how we made our tool like that one too. You teach very little bit. Oh, it's actually improved immediately, right? That's why people love that. And the last part of it is it has to be easily integrated. So which means it is now you say today Siri doesn't know about my plants, doesn't know the knowledge. If I point to Siri to say, look at those websites. They are actually the websites selling plans. Do that. And if Siri can do that, perfect. I will use it again. So this about this openness, about integrability, about this prescriptive. It's important, but most of them don't have that. So when you create a tool, the tool needs to be useful and usable, right? I always use this U2, 2U, U2, whatever you say, U square, which means useful and usable. If it's one of them doesn't have it, and people are not going to use it, will be abandoned it. So that's why we also talk to the supervisor, our clients. They said, you will be the supervisor of your AI. Don't abandon your AI. It's almost like adopt a child, right? If you abandon your AI assistant, your assistant will be abandoned. So let me share with you one data. We are so excited about it. So some of the universities are using ours. So I see their answering rate about answering prospect students' questions 99.7%, which means they did a great job about understanding and set the right expectation too, right? If you go to their web, if you go to the one, it answers 100% of 99% of any question, of course not. But they go there to do this one, they answer the 99.7% of the questions regarding about their programs, regarding about their application processes, right? So people had this, of course, and they say people will use it. It does because it does the job, right? So it's so to answer your question, for long answer short, it is set the expectation in the domain. Second part of it is do not abandon it. Keep improving it.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. So that brings me back to the journey you all are on at Juji. What is Juji working on currently? What are your challenges, and what's just over the horizon? What is the next huge milestone for you as a company?
Yeah, great question. So right now, I think one of the challenges is because like now you ask people, why do you need the website, right? So probably you don't need to ask this question. Everybody can have the answer why you need a website. Otherwise, you're not going to be found, right? So now when people, especially pioneers, innovators, they wanted to use the AI chatbots, right? So they already adopted. So that part we don't have any challenge in terms of once they see, oh, that's very useful, they already come up with ideas. So I think one of the challenges is it's because humans has a great knowledge, but the machines still have limitations. Remember, right? So how can you educate we call it the human supervisors of the machines, human supervisors of the AI, to take the best advantage of the AI? I think that requires education. And not just we see it's probably a new profession coming here. We call the conversational AI designer, or maybe just AI supervisors. So train them because they are great about the conversation already, but you want to let them know the constraints, the limitations of the machines, how to can best operate in this arena with the limitations. That's one, right? One challenge. Second challenge, because we have so many advanced machine intelligence already, which helps the first challenge in this case, solve this challenge, is what we call the explainable AI. How do you explain to the people? What intelligence your AI has, right? So, for example, we saw, like in our case, Juji has really thousands of now probably called built-in conversation topics. So, for example, one topic was about discussing about people's hobbies. What do you like to do? What? Even though we had this ready, when the conversational designer come here, they're not using it. It's not because they don't want to use it, because they don't know what's in it, right? What's in it? Do you remember when we watch Harry Potter? We look at magic device, a magic maybe called apparatus. If they don't tell you what's inside of it, I remember somebody even tell them, don't use it, right? Because you don't know what's going to come out of it. And it's a black box. That's why we needed to unbox the black box, to actually explain to people what inside this AI. The challenge here it is because we're explaining to people are non-IT professional. So that language, the explanation has always to be very easy to understand, right? So that's a challenge. How do you unbox? How do you basically reveal that kind of intelligence inside our engine, but not overwhelming people? That's another balance to kind of to check, right? To weigh, but without overwhelming people to say what's inside of it. So that's a challenge from our side. So the next step, we're developing things to explaining what kind of AI, especially in our case, very sophisticated now, how to use the plain language, a layman's term, a layperson's term to explain that. So people say, oh, that's what you have. Then I want to use this because it helps the first process of take the best advantage of the AI. But in the meantime, learn the limitations.
And how are you dealing with the challenge, or are you concerned about this idea of bias, or because we have to use some kind of data set or an evolving data set as ground truth for the conversations? What's your approach at Juji to make sure that you're sampling, a diverse array of people, conversations, topics, ways of communicating? And have you noticed this becoming a problem yet, or is this problem kind of overblown?
So
by
far,
just a couple
actually, there's one myth that people don't know about it is people always think we have loads of data, right? So actually, yes, in a way, we have what I call the global reach data, global reach local poor data. So what I mean by that it is, yes, you have lots of data everywhere, the one. But when really you want to train a particular task for this to do, like just an example I just gave, to train this conversation, one topic, talking about people's hobbies. I don't know if somebody heard this, your podcast, please welcome to reach out to me, say that I have loads of data just on this topic. Very little data. I'm talking about specifically just on this topic, right? Very few. But if you have lots of other one, when you put it inside, it's garbage in, garbage out. Doesn't help you, right? So actually, this is always data local poor. And local poor on social media, people think about it is, oh, I have loads of data. Once you take a look at social media statistics, only maybe 5% or maybe 1% of people produce most of the data. Then, which means the rest of the 90% of people don't have much of data. Again, when you do analytics, they have to be very careful how you use them will be representing the 1% of people, right? So that's why we're always trying to collect diverse data, but also make sure they're locally rich, can be used for the very much more finer grained tasks. It's a very big challenge. So that's why you said it is one. So when you're talking about bias, it sounds like you have lots of data already right there. You're just going to make sure you sample it right. No, most of the things, especially in the task, when real tasks, you don't have enough data. So you're right. When goes there enough data, then you want to you want to collect data as much diverse as possible.
What is your advice for entrepreneurs? And I'm asking, I'm so interested in your response because you've been through the ups and downs, the startup roller coaster, but you're also in a very high pressure pioneering area. So what would you say to either yourself when you started this, if you could talk to yourself, or what do you have for the advice for other people who are listening who are thinking, I have an idea about this and I think I should do something about it, I'm not sure.
So I think the things I learned the most is I came from a very scientific background, a scientist background. Whenever you have an idea, you really have to create it, right? So people do think it is ideas are a dime a dozen, but actually making it work, it takes a lot of effort, right? So don't create a minimum viable product, create a minimum valuable product, which means it really adds value to somebody in some situations. Test it out to find the really people say, oh, that's right. So we really just came to last year and this year to have that actually really realistic feeling to say, wow, this is so useful, versus just dancing on the surface to say, oh, this is a great one, I let you to use it. as I said, I got this feedback said, Michelle, you're not helping, because this happens to be a people I'm close to, I know. I mean, you're not helping me. You actually gave me more burdens, right? If you don't get this very authentic, realistic response, you will be just shooting in the dark and maybe just cheat yourself and cheat your team, basically, right? Maybe sometimes cheat your investors. It's very absolutely important to finding something but not just you, your potential audience find it, that's really helped me solve the problem, right? Figure out what problem it is. Not to actually trying to get the what do people call it? Get a hammer first and trying to find the nails to hammer on. Find the nails first. Still, I think this everybody said that, but again, it's just that level of detail, that level of depth is required, right? So we're lucky. We got into this National Science Foundation, NSF, this program called iCore. I recommend, especially if you're a student, if you're a professor from academia, I highly, highly recommend this program. They really teach you, you have to go talk to your potential customers, right? But not just the one time, many, many times to go there to ask them, hey, use it, find out if it really solves the problem. Basically, don't cheat yourself.
I like the way you put that. Yeah, I've never heard someone put that, but that really is, you're shooting yourself in the foot, and like you said, your team. Yeah. So I guess my last question is really, what do you need? What does Juji need to reach your next step? Are you guys are you looking for growth goals? Are you looking for funding? How can the world help you?
Talents. So we're hiring right now, and we love to attract people who actually have a sense of a design and the user-centered design, which means they care about what users use, users' feedback, right? And also talented in terms of realize our vision in terms of actually do this low-code AI, right? And the explainable AI. Explain in a very beautiful, in a very understandable, in a very natural way to our clients how the AI actually can help them. So I would say talents is the number one priority always for us. So if somebody hear this one, just go submit your resume to us at actually called, I think the video is jobs@juji-inc.com. I'm going to do a jobs@juji-inc.com. Yeah.
And I was going to ask you where people can find you, but I'll put up your social links as well. So in the description of this podcast. So this has been an absolute pleasure to be able to talk to one of the leaders in the field. I know you're still very active in the scientific research area as well. You're editing a journal, and so you see a lot of things come across your desk that show kind of people doing the forefront of stuff. So thank you so much for your time, and really appreciate educating me and the audience on this very exciting part of AI.
Thank you, Ravi. Great. Yeah, it's really a pleasure speaking with you, and hopefully your audience will find at least some part of it useful. Okay, yeah.